Murder rates surge across the nation as Democrat-controlled cities implode. In this video, we're going to take a look at the spike in homicides in our nation's cities, making 2020 an unprecedented year for such spikes, how Democrat-dominated cities are literally imploding all across the nation, and why more and more urban residents have had enough and are abandoning these cities once and for all. You are not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Dr. Steve here with you. Wonderful to be with you. As always, we're here to give you conservative hope in the midst of turbulent times by helping you think better so you can feel better. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. We'd love to have you as a regular part of this channel where each and every day we analyze what are often distressing current events, but always in light of very hopeful conservative trends so we can all live in the present in light of better things to come. But first, did you know that studies show that air quality inside our homes is actually less safe than outdoors? Air pollution could actually be 2 to 5 times higher indoors than outdoors. And that's why I've got the amazing clean air device in my home. This device is an air purifier and air ionizer that eliminates up to 99.7% of indoor air pollutants. Now, I partnered with the creators behind Amazing Clean Air to give my audience 50% off your own purifier if you click on that link down below today. It's right, 50% off, but it is a limited time offer. Click on that link below or go to amazingcleanair.com. That's amazingcleanair.com and purify the air quality in your home today. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. It's really not deniable anymore that the places in our nation where the Democrats have a literal monopoly, where it's completely one-party rule, those places all across the nation are imploding. Now, this according to the Washington Post of all places. They decided to take a break from their incessant Trump bashing and actually do some reporting. 2020 has been a killer year in every way, including murder. The United States has experienced the largest single one-year increase in homicides since the country started keeping such records in the 20th century, according to crime data and criminologists. The grim body count isn't quite over yet, but the data collected so far is stark. A 20.9% increase in killings nationwide in the first 9 months of the year, according to the FBI, and even bloodier increases in many major cities due largely to gun violence. Homicides recorded by 57 U.S. police agencies found a 37% increase for a similar time frame, according to figures compiled by Jeff Asher, an analyst and consultant who studies crime data. Quote, like everything else in 2020, the crime data was a disaster. There was a huge spike in murder, and it's hard to say just how bad it is, but it's fairly clear we are going to see the largest single year rise, close quote, Asher said. When it comes to homicide, arguably the most important measuring stick for crime, the sudden increase has been shocking, and it has. It's been beyond shocking. Just to drive this home again, in the 57 major cities for which data is available, 57 cities, the murder rate was up by an average of almost 40%. Murder went up in 51 cities, down in only 6 cities. Murder is up 74% in Seattle, 72% in Minneapolis, 56% in Chicago, 54% in Boston, 40% in New York, 35% in St. Louis, 30% in LA. And keep in mind, every city I just named has had a Democrat monopoly governing it for decades. And we just can't point this out enough. This is simply beyond dispute at this point. Democrats destroy everything they touch. Do you remember how the Washington Post got so self-owned when they tried to contradict President Trump's assertion that all the cities that were rotting and burning down over the summer, they were all under Democrat rule? Do you remember that? It was absolutely hilarious. It was the Washington Post. I mean, they actually ran a story complaining, whining that the president keeps claiming the most dangerous cities in America, they're all run by Democrats, but they're not. They're not. He's wrong. They're the most rotting and degenerating cities in the nation. They're not all run by Democrats. Stop saying it. It's not true. So these leftist activists disguised as journalists over at the Washington Post actually ran an article trying to take issue with the notion that all the degenerating cities in our nation, all the crime-ridden rat holes, are all run by Democrats. And what they did in this article, do you know, This left-wing activist disguised as a journalist over the Washington Post who put this article together, he tried to prove Trump wrong. And so what he did was he compiled two lists. One of the 20 most violent cities in the nation according to FBI statistics in total, and the other 20 most violent cities in the nation per capita, right, per their population. And the article listed out city after city after city after city after city, and next to it was Democrat, Democrat, Democrat. Of the top 20 most violent cities outright, 17 of the 20 were run by Democrats. 2 cities had an independent mayor, although I'm sure the city councils themselves were all dominated by Democrats. And only one, Jacksonville, was run by a Republican. But this self-own gets worse. When the Washington Post examined the second list, the data of violence per capita, none of the 20 most violent cities had a Republican government. Not one. And yet these cultural Marxists at the Washington Post thought they were debunking Trump. I mean, it was one of the most cringe-worthy examples of self-owns imaginable. And this is simply becoming more and more impossible to deny. And that impossibility of denial goes beyond the statistics. It goes beyond the fact that while our political class is all freaked out about insurrection in Washington, D.C., the very capital city that surrounds them has seen a 20% spike in murder, which is, by the way, the third consecutive year the murder rate has spiked in D.C. This all goes way beyond that. It all goes way beyond the fact that in New York City, killings rose almost 40% this year. Shootings nearly doubled, up 200% from the previous year. The impossibility of denial can be seen in the little breakdown, the explicit degeneration of law enforcement in virtually every one of these cities. A breakdown that is the direct result of the Democrats' assault on law enforcement. But before we get into that, I'm so excited to announce that we do have a brand new alt-tech anti-censorship guide coming out. And if you click on the link below, you can actually help us name it. It's a guide that we put together. It's going to give you all of the alternative social media sites that you can go to that have all your favorite independent content creators, but without any of the censorship that we're being exposed to by big tech. It's absolutely free as an ebook download. And if you click on that link below, you'll be the first to know as soon as the ebook is released. And again, you can even help us name it. So don't wait. Click on that link below and be the first to know about the release of our free alt-tech anti-censorship guide today. All right. So in terms of the Democrat-inflicted breakdown in law enforcement, again, you got to remember, when the Minneapolis Police Department a few months back, or whatever was left of it, officially announced that the citizens of Minneapolis actually ought to expect to get mugged and robbed. Do you remember this? Law and order is so broken down in Minneapolis that if you were living there, you should expect to be a crime victim. This wasn't a joke, gang. This wasn't from the Babylon Bee. It was not satire. You literally had headlines that read, Minneapolis police tell residents to obey criminals and be prepared to be robbed. And when you have a city run by liberal, narcissistic, psychopath Democrats in the city council, who, by the way, voted to abolish the Minneapolis Police Department, you end up with a city where the police chief actually stands up and publicly declares to their citizens that they need to obey the criminals. You need to obey the criminals, and you need to be prepared to be robbed. And of course, with this kind of feckless leadership, crime of all kinds has surged beyond comprehension in Minneapolis. Auto thefts jumped 46%, robberies soared 36%, shootings were up, homicides have been up, and we could see why. In the wake of the George Floyd riots, over 40 officers resigned and another 75 officers took indefinite medical leave for post-traumatic stress disorder. All in all, in the 2 months following the riots, the Minneapolis Police Department shrunk by 10%. And we're seeing the same scenario play out in city after city after city. And so as a result, these Democrat disasters, these left-wing dominated cities are uncontrollably shrinking. They're contracting. Virtually all these cities are seeing a massive flight of residents that want nothing more to do with these Democrat disasters. I mean, the left-wing activists disguised as journalists at the Washington Post can try to spin this as much as possible, but there is no spinning the fact that these cities are literally hemorrhaging tax-paying residents because of Democrats. Since 2015, New York has lost an astonishing 320,000 residents. 320,000 in 5 years. And we can see precisely where they're losing population. That, of course, is New York City. It's almost become commonplace now to read articles declaring the death of New York. It's estimated that between March and May of 2020, get this, between the months of March and May, 3 months, New York lost almost 500,000 residents. An estimated 420,000 residents left the city. In July, there was a record 13,000 apartment vacancies across Manhattan. New lease signings fell by nearly 25%. New York City has seen its average real estate sale price fall by an astonishing 17.7% since February. And if we go clear across the other coast, we see a comparable flight epidemic in California and its degenerating cities. According to the U.S. Census, every year for the past 15 years, an average number of 100,000 Californians leave the state as voted against those who move in. California's been hemorrhaging residents every year for the last 15 years. And we saw this most recently with people like Joe Rogan and Elon Musk. They've both taken off for Texas. And again, we're seeing the exodus primarily in their cities. San Francisco rent prices for a one-bedroom apartment have dropped an astounding 12% in the last year, and they continue to fall. We've also seen residential vacancy rates nearly double. They've jumped from 3.9% to 6.2%. And commercial rental vacancies have jumped from 5% to nearly 10%. In downtown Los Angeles, condo sales have dropped 42%. We could go on and on and on. And I think we're seeing nothing less than what's called the Detroitification of our cities. Detroit used to be a vibrant city. Today, it's a thoroughly depressed and dilapidated city, which, as it turns out, is becoming the model for what's happening to virtually all of our cities throughout the nation, but most especially the ones in leftist liberal states, all of which these cities are dominated by Democrats. So while our DC elites might think that the Biden years represent some grand reset of liberal globalist ideals, the fact is that the very regions where leftism dominates are doing little more than wasting away. Now, before you go, make sure to like this video, comment down below, and subscribe to my channel. You definitely want to check out my latest video. I just uploaded it on how President Trump is poised to take out GOP traitors throughout the nation, and all his Republican counties are fighting back against their feckless rhino leadership. You are not going to want to miss this, so make sure to click on the link, and I will see you over there. God bless.